Hi, this is Chris Heineken bringing you a new installment of our Insight track at Atrium. And the goal of the interviews is to bring market trending from thought leaders in industry and technology around analytics, machine learning, and how companies are evolving to be more data-driven. Joining me today is Susan Emerson, who leads the go-to-market for Salesforce Einstein and has a deep knowledge of the analytics and AI space. And Susan, before we get going, I just wanted to say a quick thank you for being such a tremendous advisor to us. And you're an advisor to many in the ecosystem as well, and for placing your trust in us as we got going in 2018. So it's been great working with you. And I know you like to cut to the chase, so let's do it. Let's get some of your thoughts. And first question for you is, how has the mindset around systems of intelligence changed over the last several months? Maybe take us a little bit through pre-COVID, post-COVID. What's the market doing from your perspective?
Yeah, so first of all, it's my pleasure to speak with you today and always to be a supporter of the work that you guys are doing within the Salesforce ecosystem. It's great. Second of all, thank you for acknowledging my New Yorker tendencies in terms of cutting to the chase. And now in terms of like answering your specific question, I would say like in terms of the question, like what do I see in terms of the mindset, in terms of the activity, I'd boil it down to, maybe three different categories of things that I'm seeing, and this is at a high level. And one, every industry and every company and every workforce is affected, albeit in different ways. But that's translated to, I've never seen this space as busy or as active as it is right now. And then I'll talk about, areas where we see this acceleration. So never been busier, accelerated conversations around this. The second thing I would see, I've seen recently is that with everyone around the world with this work at home paradigm, there's the lessening of travel of everyone in the workforce has created this new space for the following. I've seen this huge uptick in the ability to reach and work with business stakeholders. Now, very specifically, this is translated into very orchestrated meetings between analytics and AI development teams engaging their stakeholders to co-create a future in really powerful ways in terms of setting the next chapter for their roadmaps. So that's been really fun in terms of that new collaboration and co-creation with the business stakeholders. And then the third thing is just what I would say a continuum of the theme that I label analytics is really not the protagonist of the story. And what I mean by that is when you have the work surface as Salesforce to provide a scaffolding of analytics and AI insights, like we've been on this business journey for a couple years now, to have people reimagine how they think about analytics. Like analytics have always been the, very right brain, very analytical. Let's do lots of tables. Let's do lots of math. Let's cram every bit of visuals we can on the screen, to kind of a new restraint and a new paradigm where we use that work surface as Salesforce to bring the insights to the users in very powerful ways that are always anchored to business outcomes and behaviors and actions. And this is something we've been beating the drum for a while, and it's like people are finding fire for the first time. Like it is really starting to catch on like a wildfire, I guess. Continue with that metaphor.
Yeah, well, that takes me back to a few years ago. It was all about, the use cases around analytics and AI. Everybody was kind of struggling with AI was talked about in these conceptual levels. How do I make it operational for myself and consumable, something that I can act on? You talked about that. What are some of the, common use cases that you're seeing across the ecosystem now around analytics and predictions? Anything that jump out to you across horizontal business problems or specific verticals? Your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I would say like maybe just starting with the just the AI component, because you mentioned that this is starting to take off now in terms of, out of the lab and out of the theory and into practice. What I would say, at least for us, is that AI is the machine learning predictions are intentionally staying close to the CRM. Back to that comment I made earlier, the CRMs are typically places where people and processes are surrounding the customer. And so the AI use cases follow that in terms of, things that make sense in the context of CRM. So if you're talking to, marketing teams or teams that are like on the forefront of securing new business, it's a lot of things around prioritizing leads and campaigns and different ways to engage. And then when you're in and the use cases vary a little bit between B2B and B2C style things, but there's always some sort of prediction along the way to help people, and just kind of to abstract it up. It's like, who do I call on, in what order? And when I get there, what do I say or do to try to drive this thing to the best outcome for us and for the customer? So it's those kind of use cases very close to the CRM and very much focused around use cases of immediacy and priority, right? Those types of things in terms of organizing large field and service teams.
Yeah, it's been interesting for us to watch, Susan, as we see kind of the notion of analytics, artificial intelligence. Those are kind of those are edgy topics. People don't know what they mean in many times, and so a lot of our messaging and education in the market over the last several months has been, how do you connect those topics with broader business themes? Yeah. So just adding to what you said, I think what we're seeing as far as the high traffic use cases, a lot around anything related to like customer churn and retention.
Yep.
Intelligent predictive forecasting, lead acquisition. So all of those ones were ones that you're hitting on. And I think we're really excited to go deeper in each of those areas, as well as add a few new ones to the mix here in the coming years. So
yeah, in terms of like the areas that we see, like, as I mentioned earlier, everyone's business has been, affected in different ways. Where we're seeing acceleration and focus in some areas that are just white hot, like in terms of the re-terraforming of the earth, as people are all working from home and considering, moving from cities or things like that. This has just put the mortgage business really at pace. And so we see a lot of focus there in terms of, lead scoring and priority scoring. These are things with short shelf life. And it's just, it's a big area where we see a lot of things going on. The second thing I would say is in the more sort of just classic B2B areas, opportunity scoring, and really from a twofold perspective. One is to give the team on the ground focus on what are the right opportunities to progress, why are they not progressing, and then also, like, I was on a call with a customer today in Europe that it wasn't always about progressing opportunities, but sometimes it's a cost takeout model in terms of these ones below the line, we just don't have time for right now because our business is just accelerating in other areas. So there's definitely sort of that sort of thing. And then separately, everyone right now, just in terms of the volatility of their business, there's never been a greater need for accurate forecasting. So having these top-down programs where the predictions are not just serving the people who are close to the transactions, but also management in terms of looking at the health, the volatility, the velocity of the pipeline. So from both perspective, and as you said, churn, and then even in some cases, discounting perspectives in terms of, what are the appropriate discounts to be, surrounding a specific transaction or deal.
Couldn't agree more on a lot of those use cases you just rolled through. We're seeing a ton of that in the market. It brings up a next question for you, which is, a lot of times companies are intimidated by even starting their journey. If you were to kind of be, you could wave the wand today and say, I wish all these companies could do one thing to remove a roadblock that you consistently see. Yeah. One roadblock you would focus on? Any advice you'd give there?
Well, I mean, I would approach it maybe less in terms of like, I don't think of it in terms of a technical roadblock. There's always like technical stacks that organizations deal with. I think the bigger thing is more of a cultural and a mindset shift. And so some of the things that we see happening or that we see resonating with customers is that one is to reimagine their analytics footprint, right? As I mentioned earlier, historically analytics has a rap of being the thing that you use to run your weekly meeting or your quarterly meeting, your monthly meeting. Like for sure that there is a place for that. That's sort of table stakes for analytics. But increasingly people are seeing, like we've coined it like the intelligent experience. Like, how do we use these same tools, not just to run meetings, but to help drive decision making and behavior at scale across really large organizations? So having organizations recognize that that's the opportunity. It's not creating better dashboards with more chart types and better numbers and fonts. It's how do you use these things to effectively adjust a really big organization and align them to the strategic missions of the company and to the needs of the customer in the marketplace. So that's sort of one thing, just like changing the mindset of how analytics can be deployed. And then secondly, we see sort of, we do a lot of work around, culture and decision making in terms of how to help organizations make that shift to what we would call democratizing decision making, right? And there's a lot of things that need to be in place, for those conditions of innovation. And some of them are technical, like you probably want a lean tech stack because you want to be able to go fast and you don't want to be spending all your time gluing things together and then re-gluing them together when you switch out some parts. So like lean tech stack is one of these things. Another thing is velocity is now a really new competitive differentiator. Like speed and relevance really matter, especially, with COVID. And so, and then this, this does dovetail into some of the things that the way we iterate and build our AI use cases, but velocity around that machine learning stuff is really important. It can't be a project that's going to take 9 months. No one has the bandwidth to wait 9 months for these things. And then secondly, in terms of that AI stuff, machines, like they accelerate us. There's a lot of that racings with machine stuff and, are they taking our jobs? No, they help us decide what to do, when, and what order. So, and Steve Schwartz, a futurist and an SVP at Salesforce, he has a quote that I love where he says, it goes something like this. I'm more worried about being replaced by a salesperson with that AI machine than the AI machine itself. Like, so how can this machine learning and this AI accelerate us? And then of course, whenever you're talking about, anything with machine learning, it's the appropriate use of data and the ethical policies that go with them. So we do a lot of work in terms of like, if we're going to really democratize decision making and bring insights to users, down the organization to the closest point that's interacting with the customer, what has to be in place to get that right? So those are sort of the things that we see.
It's that democratization framework, it sounds like. It's a really big deal. I mean, we see similar things where it's not just about the pretty dashboard. You mentioned that. It's, it's not just about the insight. It's what are you going to do with it? Can you take what you have as an insight and actually thread that into the workflow and have action around it? So very consistent.
Back to these, like, with these stakeholder engagements that I said, we're starting to see a lot of, like, we've developed a lot of tools and protocols to help people. It's really easy for people to shout out a KPI, like my KPI is sales, or my KPI is churn, and or my business question is like, what's in the pipeline? Like, so it's pretty easy for people to start there. There is a big gap to get them to this beautiful end state, and it's been really fun running these workshops where either we're kind of question storming their business and giving them a framework to think about these things so we can articulate that into a delivery plan for them, but then also like even taking a step back with more of these like business war game simulations in terms of just, really opening up new ways of thinking about how we want the analytics to support these big business initiatives. So it's just been really fun to do these transformations with companies.
Well, it's been fun to be on the kind of transformation journey with you and with Salesforce. I mean, when we got started, we intentionally made a bet in the ecosystem because we believe Salesforce had some real advantages around analytics and AI, given the proximity to the business problems around CRM and the user base. So that's been fantastic to watch. As you think about Einstein and investment over the next few years and where you think Salesforce should be investing and positioning, any thoughts that come to mind as far as where you're going to be spending time?
Well, we've been organized around a couple of themes very deliberately for the last a little while, and that's where our investments go. They follow our themes, and so they've been roughly around three areas: the user experience, data, and then intelligence and machine learning. And we have a very big safe harbor culture, so I'll stay within the framework of that. But on the experience or the delivery and the consumption of all of these analytics and machine learning, the big investments have been really twofold in terms of how do we make things easier for the developers to build. Of course, with every release, there's more new features there. There's easier ways to achieve things, whether it's things like data set binding or doing conditional formatting and stuff like that. And then the other thing has been around accelerating the innovation. And we really have a luxury at Salesforce because in many cases, we have a pretty good understanding of what people are going to do with Salesforce when they crack open the platform. Like they're either, core sales cloud, service cloud, or they might be industry cloud with wealth management or retail banking or manufacturing. So we have a huge leg up because we know the data model, we know the use cases, we know the persona, we know the job to be done, we know the workflows that people want to do. And so, back to what I was saying earlier, and then the customer will have a KPI and a business objective, and then we know all the infrastructure here. We bring to market these out-of-the-box applications and user experiences that really accelerate that journey, right? You don't have to build the data model. You don't have to build the data set. We can come to you with some AI templates. So accelerating both great use cases and best practices. So we'll continue to do that across the industries that we support. On data, our data journey has been data scale and data reach in terms of going for more data sources and going for larger, high performant data infrastructure within Salesforce. And then more recently, adding to data scale and data reach has been go to where the data is. And so we've been adding into the product line the ability to go direct to data sources, which really opens up sort of a lot of new things for people, whether they couldn't move their data or they just didn't want to. That's opening up a lot of new architecture. And then on the AI innovation, it's really been across two fronts. One in terms of the specific algorithm types in terms of increasing our footprint there, with the introduction of tree-based models in the summer and winter releases here. And then also, additional tools around enterprise machine learning operations in terms of the care and feeding of your ML models, in terms of the scheduled refreshes and looking at model drift and performance over time. And then bringing some of those AI insights through autonomous insights to the user experience is stuff that we're working on as well. That's a pretty big slate. A lot to deliver on there, Susan. Impressive. And we had our product planning session the other day, and you'll probably have to cut this out, the interview, but I felt like if you've ever had an experience in a museum like the Prado or maybe even d'Orsay, where you'll spend a couple of hours and you're just so overwhelmed by art that you just cry. I kind of felt that about the work that our PMs and engineers are doing to build product. It's really compelling stuff. I love the metaphor. Susan, we really thank you for joining today. And as usual, every time we speak, I learn a ton. So appreciate your perspective here and look forward to working with you on the balance of the year and beyond. Thank you. My pleasure.